That was fun. That was a great college basketball game. Hi, friends. I'm Zach Joachim. This is On the Horn, coming at you from my apartment in downtown Richmond, featuring Harvey. Harvey, say hey to On the Horn, bud. I know, did you enjoy that game? He's enjoying the nice weather and his walks around Richmond right now. Coming at you from my apartment in downtown Richmond after VCU beat Dayton 68-62. To finish the regular season 24-7, 15-3 in A10 play. They'd already locked up the number 2 seed in the A10 tournament, but it does give them a chance to share the A10 regular season crown with St. Louis if St. Louis were to lose at George Mason tomorrow. I'm not sure anyone really cares about that at this juncture. I mean, I think St. Louis already cut down the nets like earlier in the week. I think everyone, in multiple fan bases and around programs around the A10 too are in agreement. That like I felt bad for Richmond like a few years ago when they shared it with Loyola Chicago, even though they beat them that year. It really should be that, if you win the head-to-head, then it's not a co-regular season championship. It's an outright regular season championship. But it is what it is. That cuts both ways. VCU shared it with George Mason last year after VCU beat Mason in their one head-to-head game. But more importantly, by all accounts around the bracketology world, that win moves VCU to the right side of the bubble. They got a week off now. They will not play until the A10 quarterfinal until next Friday. I think that game is at 5 p.m. Opponent obviously to be determined based on the results earlier in the week. But it's a massive quad one road win for VCU. Dayton had moved up with their 6-game win streak after they lost 99-73 at the Siegel Center a month ago. They've been playing really good basketball. This is a difficult game for VCU, which had a lot on the line. And Dayton really didn't have a whole lot of pressure on. I don't think the game makes a whole lot of a difference for them in terms of their A10 tournament seeding. What are they going to end up as the seed? They're going to be the 4 seed, and Mason, it looks like, I guess Mason could not have caught them. There was a 2-game gap. I'm looking at the standings now. So it really didn't mean a whole lot for Dayton. And it meant the world for VCU in terms of their at-large standings. And for a team that, has had so many quad one games this year that were close, Utah State, NC State, New Mexico, both St. Louis games, which didn't end up, the second one didn't end up close in the final score, but VCU led for a large stretch of that St. Louis game and had every chance to win it. I think it's cathartic and it's a bit of a relief for VCU fans for them to finally pull out, one of these close quad one games. And although there were 12 lead changes and 7 ties in this game, I thought it was a phenomenal college basketball game just from the perspective of a neutral observer. VCU did lead for 27-54. Dayton was ahead for just 8:04. And Terrence Hill, man, I'm going to start there because that dude does not look like a sophomore when he's on the ball in crunch time. Like I wrote about that. That was one of my takeaways after the George Mason game earlier this week. Like at the beginning of the season, there were so many questions around this team about who was going to be that guy that you wanted the ball in their hands late in crunch time. You lost so much backcourt depth after last year. Max Scholga wasn't walking through that door. He had the A10 Player of the Year, Phillip Russell, Zeb Jackson, Joe Bamisile, like so much experience at the guard position. And they have asked so much of Terrence Hill, Brandon Jennings, and Nick Lewis this season. And my goodness, have those underclassmen delivered, particularly in crunch time and particularly when VCU needs a bucket late in the game. They turn to Terrence Hill, because Flyers cut the deficit to 64-62 on an Emil Letang offensive rebound and putback with 1:47 to play. And then Terrence went to work at the top of the key off the dribble. I think Brandon Jennings Brandon, who had a phenomenal game as well, brought the ball up, handed off to Terrence near the top of the key, and Terrence went to work off the dribble, nailed a fadeaway mid-range jumper in the lane for 66-62 with 1:24 on the clock. And that proved the dagger as VCU got stops down the stretch there, highlighted by a huge Lazar Djokovic block on a Durkak drive to seal the deal late. They end up winning 68-62. I'll go through some quotes from Phil Martelli and Brandon Jennings in their post-game conversation with Robbie Robinson and Rodney Ashby here before getting to the play-by-play. But here's what Phil said. I asked them for their mental toughness, their physical toughness, and their emotional toughness. I thought we did that. We never blinked. This place, talking about UD Arena, is high level. It's like our place. They do it right. There's a reason VCU and Dayton have been the North Stars of this conference. Our guys just kept going whatever we needed. They made that next play. I was at UD Arena last year for that game when VCU went there. I can attest to that. It's a phenomenal college basketball atmosphere. They got some really intelligent fans who know the game really well. And I really enjoyed being there. It was sold out. I think the capacity is a little over 13,000. And so that place was rocking. but VCU, especially in crunch time, did not let the environment impact them. Here's Brandon Jennings talking about it. He finished with 8 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, and he battled foul trouble, right? He and Letang, the foul trouble for them was enormous. And by the way, I'm looking at Bubble Watch on ESPN right now as I do this video, and Lenardi has moved VCU to among his last 4 in. After entering this game, he had him in his first 4 out. And from everything I've seen in terms of the consensus around the college basketball world is that VCU right now with that quad 1 win is firmly on the right side of the bubble, although their margin for error remains thin. Going to Pittsburgh, you can't lose a quarterfinal game. I think that would put them on the wrong side of the bubble. You in all likelihood can't lose a semifinal game. That would depend on bid stealers around the country. Is it possible they could get knocked out in the semis and still sneak in? Yes, I think so. Especially if maybe Virginia Tech and South Florida can have great finishes to the year and all of a sudden give VCU 3 quad 1 wins, which makes the resume look a little different. But in order for them to feel comfortable on Selection Sunday, they need to get to the final. I think at this point, if they, with that win tonight, it gives them the leeway to, so long as they advance to Sunday and get to the A10 final, I do think they're in, regardless of the outcome, in that A10 final. But you never know. That's kind of assuming that A10 final is against St. Louis. Somebody makes a run and you face like a G-dub or something like that in the final, then it changes the complexion of things. Obviously, bid stealers around the country matter as well, but I do think that it's more likely than not that VCU is going to go dancing after this outcome. So anyway, let's get to Brandon Jennings' quote here. All moments throughout the game, we were communicating. It was vocal. Coach could hear it. We threw our all into it the whole game. There was no second guessing. That was Jennings' response when Robbie and Rodney asked him what aspects of his team's performance he was most proud of. Before the game, I knew it was going to be loud. I let all the players know it was going to be a tough environment, but it's something to embrace for all of us. You don't get moments like these a lot. I'm pretty sure we cherished it well and took care of business. And Phil Martelli echoed that. That was Brandon talking about kind of sharing his experience with last year to a lot of the newcomers on this roster who hadn't played in that environment before at UD Arena. And Martelli kind of echoed that in his last quote that really stood out to me. He said to get 15 conference wins and 7 on the road is some special stuff. And then he kind of took fans inside the VCU huddle during pregame. He said, I said to the players, I looked at them with a smile and was like, how can you not love this? This is what you dream about when you're a kid. That's what you watch and dream about. Those are the types of games you want to be in, those environments. I told them these wins in March are really hard to get, and they're the most satisfying, the most gratifying. Those locker rooms are the best locker rooms, and especially now that we go to one and done, you got to win to get your next one. You can't beat it. And that was kind of what I led with too. Like, this is such a college basketball game in March. Like, you could feel the fine margins, the heightened stakes. UD Arena was rocking, and VCU never blinked. And we'll get into the play-by-play here to go through the sequence of this game. Because again, like I said, what was it? 7 ties, 12 lead changes, but most of them came in the first half. I have it somewhere here. What was the tally on ties and lead changes in the first half? I'm looking for that here. It's somewhere here. But yeah, 10 lead changes, 5 ties in the first half. So most of them came early on, and then the last few were in the early stages of the second half. So Dayton takes a 13-8 lead on a Letang slam off a pick and roll when he got free. He was really good in the early goings. VCU's bigs were having trouble matching up with his mobility in pick and roll situations, and he got some easy buckets around the rim. So VCU's down 5, and then the Rams responded with an 11-0 run. It was huge, right? Djokovic slam on a baseline cut, great feed from Barry Evans in the middle of the lane for 13-10. Jennings Euro step on a pretty drive from the right wing, runner off glass, 13-12. And then JJ and Tracy pull up 3 at the top of the dribble with 12:20 left in the first half. That put the Rams ahead 15-13. Terrence Hill, pretty drive off a catch from Jennings, a reverse finish off glass. Terrence Hill and Javon Bennett put on a clinic in terms of their finishes around the rim. I love watching the touch for those 2 guards in this game because they had some nasty finishes off glass through traffic, just with some beautiful English on the ball. 2 incredibly crafty guards, 2 guys that I'm sure are both going to be all conference in the A10. I thought their finishing around the rim was one of my favorite aspects of this game to watch. And then a Brandon Jennings crossover on the left wing, drive and finish off glass. That made it 19-13 VCU with 10:36 to play in the first half, capped an 11-0 run. But then Dayton fought back. I want to say, they took a 22-21 lead at 8:24 on a couple of free throws. And it's kind of nip and tuck. 26 all tie on a Barry Evans catch and shoot 3 on the right wing. Barry Evans, who made 3 threes. Phil Martelli said in the postgame conversation that assistant coach Chris Cole the other day kind of told Evans to let it fly and to stop thinking about it so much from outside. He's got a good outside shot. Hasn't hit him consistently over the course of this season, but he hit him tonight, and he was not second guessing it. That made it 26-all. That came off a Terrence Hill assist. And then another couple lead changes. Nick Lewis rise and fire three between the top of the key and the right wing off the dribble. That made it 29-28 VCU with 6:20 to go in the first half. And then 34-33 Flyers lead. There were 9 fouls on VCU in the first half at that juncture, just 4 on Dayton. You could tell Martelli was not thrilled. That evened out over the rest of the game. I think it finished 15-13 in terms of calls. 15 fouls on VCU, 13 on Dayton. Interestingly, like the trend in so many college basketball games this year seems like the first half is much looser than the second, and then they call it tighter. I thought this was kind of the reverse trend, and they let them play in the second half. I'm generally just a let them play guy. I know you can't let the game get out of hand in terms of physicality, but nobody pays to come watch people shoot free throws. And so I generally, prefer a loose whistle both ways, and that was kind of how it was in the second half of this game. Evans pull-up tray on the right wing off a Nick Lewis assist in transition. Barry took one dribble to settle himself. Rosen fired with 33 seconds left in the first half. That made it 37-34. And then a Bennett fadeaway jumper took kind of a crazy bounce that was a bit of a home court roll. And that was the last bucket as the buzzer sounded for halftime. Kind of makes you think that my mind went to the Kawhi Leonard famous roll for the Sixers. It was kind of one of those, big bounces that the whole arena held their breath. So it's 37-36 VCU at halftime, and the margins are really thin. And then a 7-7 sequence, and VCU's ahead by 1 at the under 16. And then Dayton, a little spurt here. Deshane Montgomery finished with 13 points and 10 rebounds. He was big in this sequence for them. Bennett scored 17. Letang had 10. Those are the leaders for the Flyers. And Dayton takes a 49-47 lead on a Jawan Simon drive and finish off glass on the right block. And then here comes the sequence where VCU was able to really take control. Michael Bell, two-handed poster jam off a really nice Djokovic feed when Bell was crashing the lane. That made it 49 up with 12:47 to play. And then Terrence Hill, catch and shoot 3 in the right corner off a Djokovic assist, which I thought was a really good pass out of the post from Lazar, because it was just the slightest bit of help that came from Terrence's man in that right corner and opened up just a little bit of space. And Djokovic immediately read it, fired it to Terrence in the corner. He hit for 52-49, VCU with 12:03 to play. And then Djokovic on the right block off a really nice Bell feed in transition, 54-49 VCU lead. That forced a timeout from Anthony Grant with 11:05 to play. And though Dayton got it down to 2 a couple times in the final sequences, the Flyers never tied or led again. A few other sequences and plays to point to here that I noted in my notes. Hill, one of those gorgeous finishes. This was like an around-the-world reverse layup on a drive from the top of the key. That made it 58-52 VCU with 9:23 to play. And then the 4th foul on Jennings here, and he sat for a while, and that kind of freed up Bennett a little bit, because I thought Bennett's best sequences were with Jennings on the bench. Brandon's defense on Bennett was phenomenal in this game. He talked about that with Robbie and Rodney in the post-game presser. So he picks up his 4th. Bennett makes 2 free throws. That made it 58-54 VCU with 9:04 to play. And then Letang picks up his 4th foul immediately afterward, and that really affected the game for both teams. Dayton's offense was not the same without Letang on the floor, and he was not on the floor for large stretches of this game. He only played 19 minutes. That's crazy. He had 10 points, 4 rebounds in just 19 minutes. And I think it says he had 5 fouls here. He ended up fouling out late, I think, in this game. But he sat for a while here. Another gorgeous Terrence Hill finish. Drive from the top of the key. I wrote he is a magician in my notes. Finished a finger roll at the rim. That made it 60-54 VCU with 8:33 to play. And then Keontae Jones went to the line for 2 out of the stoppage. Missed 2 free throws. That's something to note here. Dayton 8 of 15 at the line. VCU 10 of 13. So the Flyers left 7 points out there. Shot just 53% from the charity stripe. They're usually a good free throw shooting team, and that killed them. That ended up shooting them in the foot. Bennett, pretty finger roll finish on a drive from the right wing, high finish off glass for 60-56. And then Mike Bell, lefty hook shot on the right block at the end of the shot clock with 6:04 to play. That made it 62-56. That was huge. And then Letang re-entered with 4 fouls with 5 minutes to play. What am I trying to get to on this final? I wrote huge stop in all caps a few times in my notes for VCU. Hill and Djokovic 2-man game, pretty pocket bounce feed from Terrence to Lazar, who finished off last. That made it 64-60 VCU, which is 2:40 to play. And then a bad turnover when Barry Evans tipped a rebound to Michael Bell, and then Bell just kind of threw it into the backcourt when Phil Martelli wanted his team to settle things down and take some time off the clock. So that gave Dayton a bit of a freebie with 2:12 to play. And then Letang threw one up, got his own rebound, and finished off glass for 64-62 with 1:47 to play. And then came what ended up being the dagger. Brandon brought the ball up. I think may have given it to Lazar and then gotten it back from him real quick at the top of the key, gave it to Terrence. He went into work and hit the fadeaway jumper off the dribble in the lane for 66-62 at 1:24. That forced an Anthony Grant timeout. And then Montgomery airballed a three. Jennings got the rebound. He was fouled in the open court. Only the 6th foul on Dayton, so VCU still had to inbound. They weren't going to shoot the 1-on-1 quite yet. That was a 49 seconds on the clock. Dayton did not foul then. They chose to let VCU run the clock down, up 4. And then Evans missed a 3 on the right wing, so it was Dayton ball out of bounds with 20.3 to play, and then came the huge block from Djokovic on a Dirk hack drive. I think I wrote in all caps, he says, "No, sir." And Robbie, who was really fun on the call, was yelling, "No, sir." And then Jennings got the rebound. He was fouled immediately. Missed the front end of a 1-on-1, but then a really heady play. I'm not sure who it was. I think it was Michael Bell, because Dayton had a chance there, and VCU had a foul to give, and Michael Bell knew it. And so he fouled Javon Bennett in the open floor with just 10 seconds on the clock. And that's another timeout from Anthony Grant there. And then Montgomery 3, no good. Michael Bell rebound, gave it to Djokovic with 4.5 seconds on the clock. Djokovic was fouled. He hit 2 for the final margin, 68-62 VCU. And the Rams are in a massive, tough to overstate how big that win is in terms of their at-large hopes. They were going to be the 2 seed anyway in the A10 tournament. It doesn't change the standing there. And I'm not sure anyone really cares about possibly sharing the regular season crown with St. Louis if they were to lose at George Mason tomorrow. But in terms of your at-large hopes, it's enormous. It's a hang your hat on it, quad 1 win that VCU really needed. No bad losses over the course of the year. What are they, 10-0 in quad 4, 9-0 in quad 3, or something like that. And they moved to the right side of the NCAA tournament at large bubble. Now we got a week off. I'm flying to Pittsburgh on Tuesday because I'm also covering UR. So I will be there on Wednesday for the opening round to cover the Spiders. And so, yeah, I think Phil Martelli press conference early next week. I'm really hoping it's on Monday, because if it's on Tuesday, I'm flying out that afternoon. I might not be able to go. My flight departs at like 12 p.m. from Richmond to get to Pittsburgh. So Chris Kowalczyk, VCU, anyone, if you're watching this, please hold the press conference on Monday so I can go. Rams travel safe back from Dayton with a massive victory that, by all accounts, moves VCU to the right side of the NCAA tournament at large bubble. That was fun. That was a great college basketball game. I'm Zach Joachim. This is On the Horn. Harvey, say bye-bye, bud. Yeah, I know. Say bye-bye to On the Horn. Yeah. Hey, what you think? I know. Okay. Bye, guys. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for tuning in. Y'all rock.